The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The Coruscant sky is the color of an old bruise, not the deep, clean dark of space, the particular orange-brown of a city that has forgotten what stars look like from the ground, a sky lit from beneath by billions of lives stacked on top of each other, a glow that never goes out, that was never meant to be beautiful and somehow, in certain moments, in certain moods, almost is. The temple steps are white stone, worn smooth by 10,000 years of robed feet. They catch the ambient light and hold it the way old bone holds cold. She takes 3 steps, her boots sound against the stone, once, twice, 3 times, and then they do not. I have walked away from this moment 10,000 times in the dark. I memorized the exact color of the sky, the exact weight of the braid in my hand, before I let it go. I built a life out of that walk, out of that refusal. I told myself it was strength. Standing here again, I understand it was the most catastrophic mistake I ever made, and I made it out of pride. She stops, not dramatically, not with a sharp intake of breath or a hand pressed to her chest. She stops the way a person stops when they have walked away from something essential, and only feel its absence when they are already in motion. A stumble with no visible cause. A body that will not continue. The braid is in her right hand. She can still feel the weight of it. She gave it to him 30 seconds ago and she can still feel it. The specific texture of the woven strand, the small beads at the end, the physical evidence of a bond that took 10 years to build and 30 seconds to sever. She closes her fist around empty air. Then she turns. He is still standing on the steps. He has not moved. His hand is open, the braid resting across his palm, and he has not closed his fist around it yet because he is afraid that if he does, it becomes real. He sees her turn. His first instinct is relief, enormous and immediate, flooding through him before he can examine it. His second instinct is confusion, because she is looking at him in a way that no one has ever looked at him in his life. Not with worship, not with the careful assessment of the Council reading the Chosen One prophecy against the man standing in front of them, not with the specific exhausted expectation Obi-Wan sometimes carries, the look of a man managing something larger than he was prepared for. She is looking at him with grief. Old grief. The kind that has been processed so many times it no longer causes sharp pain. It has become structural. A low, persistent weight behind the sternum, present the way scar tissue is present, unremarkable until pressure is applied. She is grieving him. Not his absence, not his death, his existence, his unawareness, the fact that he is standing on these steps in the orange Coruscant light, 20 years old, unmarked, completely unaware of what is already in motion around him. It takes him several seconds to identify what he is seeing. When he does, it frightens him more than the grief would have. She walks back up the steps. Slowly, she stops 1 step below him. "They are eye level. I can't walk away from you," she says. I thought I could. I've been trying to for a very long time. What does that mean? Ahsoka, you just handed me your. I need you to trust me, she says. Right now, without explanation, can you do that? He looks at her face. Something is wrong with it in a way he cannot name. Her eyes are the same, her voice is the same, but the thing behind both, the quality of attention, the particular density of her presence, is wrong for anyone he has ever met. You're asking me to... Come with me, she says, into the lower levels, somewhere they cannot hear us. Who's they? She holds his gaze. 1 beat. 2. Everyone, she says. She does not take official transport. She moves through the temple district the way water moves, not by stealth, not by concealment, but by navigation. She knows which routes are not watched, not because she has memorized the surveillance grid of this specific hour on this specific evening, but because she knows the pattern. Where monitoring terminals tend to cluster, what sight lines the guards rely on, what civilian traffic makes a gap in coverage almost geometric in its reliability. She moves through those gaps without appearing to try. Anakin follows her. He is constitutionally incapable of silence when he wants answers. He is managing it, barely, because she has said the word everyone with a specificity that his instincts have categorized as serious, and his instincts are, whatever else might be said about him, excellent. They take a public transit line. The car is half full. A Duros businessman reviewing a datapad, 2 Twilight women in manufacturing coveralls, a human child asleep against his mother's shoulder, Ahsoka does not watch the passengers with suspicion. She watches them the way a physician watches a room, cataloging, sorting, making assessments that require no effort because the framework is so deeply established it runs without conscious input. The businessman is preoccupied. The Twi'lek women are exhausted. The child has not slept enough. None of them are watching. The city descends around them as the transit drops levels. The light changes first, gold giving way to amber, amber to deep orange. The architecture compresses. Newer construction gives way to older, then to older still, layers of city pressing down and down, each era of building bolted over the previous one until the walls themselves become a kind of stratigraphy. The people change too. Different species, different clothes, a different quality of attention, the specific alertness of people who have learned that no one is coming to help them. Anakin watches Ahsoka watch the city change. She does not look surprised by any of it. She looks at level 3000 the way someone looks at a place they have visited before and are measuring against memory. "All right," he says, his voice quiet but the frustration finally surfacing. "I've been following you in silence for 40 minutes. You have approximately 30 seconds before I start demanding answers at a volume that defeats whatever you're trying to accomplish." 15 seconds, she says, without turning around. "What? You lasted 15 seconds before threatening to make noise. You've gotten better." "Ahsoka, not here," she says. She scans the transit platform around them, a single pass, efficient, invisible to anyone not watching for it. "Soon," she says. The abandoned Senate housing block sits in a pocket of genuine dark between two industrial processor units. The processor units hum at a frequency below conscious hearing, felt in the sternum rather than the ears. The block itself is 5 stories of prefabricated durasteel and composite paneling, the kind of construction that was meant to last 20 years and has now lasted 200 through sheer structural stubbornness. The lock on the main door is old. Ahsoka stands in front of it, one hand raised but not touching it, and applies something to the mechanism so precise and so brief that Anakin does not register that she has done anything until the door opens. Under 2 seconds, no tool, no visible effort. He files this away and says nothing. Inside, dark, dry, the specific quality of air that has not moved in a long time. Their footsteps disturb a layer of fine particulate that swirls upward through the beam of Anakin's force light, a small, steady illumination that turns the dust to something almost beautiful. The room they settle in was once a common area. The remains of seating are bolted to the floor in rows, most of the material stripped for salvage, leaving only the metal frames. The walls carry faded markings, Republic Housing Authority registration numbers, a maintenance schedule last updated 180 years ago. Anakin is about to speak. Ahsoka sits down on the floor, not on the seating frames, on the floor itself, cross-legged, and she presses both hands over her face. He stops. He has followed her into warships, into droid factories, into the middle of firefights that should have been impossible to survive. He has seen her scared, or rather, he has seen the version of scared she allowed herself, the compressed, operational version that was more useful than its alternative. He has never seen this, whatever this is. He crouches in front of her. He does not touch her shoulder. He waits. "Snips," he says quietly, the frustration entirely gone. "Talk to me." "Don't call me that," she says, from behind her hands. "I'm not crying," she says. She lowers her hands. He looks at her face. She is right. Her eyes are dry, but whatever is in them is worse than tears. It is the expression of someone absorbing an impact that happened a long time ago, that they thought they had finished absorbing, that has turned out to be still in process. "What is it?" he asks. "Seeing you like this," she says. "Like what?" "I'm just standing here." "I know," she says. "That's exactly it." The city breathes around them, the distant hum of the processors, the faint percussion of machinery several levels above, the particular silence of a place that has been left alone for so long it has started to belong to itself. "I'm going to tell you something," she says. "It will require you to set aside everything you think you know about the Force, about time, about what is and isn't possible. I need you to hear all of it before you respond. Do you understand? I need you to be certain." He looks at her, at the eyes that are familiar and wrong in equal measure, at the stillness of a person who has made peace with something enormous. "I'm certain," he says, "because if you react before I finish, if you walk out of this room, if you go to the Council, if you do anything before you have heard everything, we will both die, and everyone we love will burn." The Force light flickers, not from wind, from nothing visible at all. Tell me, he says, very quietly. She does not begin with Palpatine. She does not begin with the war, or the chips, or the thing that lives inside the black armor that will one day carry his voice. She begins the way a surgeon begins, not at the wound, but at the edge of it, the place where healthy tissue meets damaged, the place where the knife can enter cleanly. I have to establish something first, she says, before anything else. He is sitting now, across from her on the bare floor, force light steady between them. He has the particular stillness of a person holding themselves in place by will. Everything in him wants to move, to pace, to do something with his hands. He is not doing those things. For her, he is not doing those things. You asked me what is happening to me. The honest answer is that I am not entirely the Ahsoka Tano who left the temple today. He does not interrupt. In the version of events that should have happened, that did happen, somewhere in the structure of time I no longer fully understand, I walked down those steps and I disappeared. I built a life on my own terms. I was useful. I operated under a name I gave myself, Fulcrum, a signal point, a fixed coordinate for people who needed to find safety. What do you mean, did happen? He asks. I mean, I've lived a version of the next 20 years. I have seen what becomes of the galaxy when I walk away today. I came back. I don't know if back is the right word exactly, carrying that knowledge, and I cannot unknow it. And I cannot stand here looking at you and pretend that I can simply walk away again. She has watched him do it 100 times in a life she carries in her bones. He breaks it into components, attacks each one for logical failure, works toward a conclusion by elimination rather than by intuition. It is a deeply Anakin way of thinking. It is also, frequently, correct. You're saying you're from the future, he says. I'm saying I carry the future. My body is 16, what I know is not. The Force doesn't work like, in the life I have already lived, she says. There is a place called the world between worlds. He stops, a threshold that exists between all times and all places. I have been there. I have seen events that had already passed. Unfolding in front of me, I reached through one of those windows and pulled someone I loved out of death. She pauses. Time can be touched. Anakin, the Jedi do not teach this because they do not know it. The processors hum outside the walls. The dust they disturbed on the way in has settled back to the floor. What did you see? He asks. In the future, you've lived. She looks at him. He meets her eyes without flinching. She has always respected that about him. Even when everything else about his emotional architecture was a disaster, he looked directly at things. He did not look away from what he was afraid of. He moved toward it. The tragedy in the life she carries was always in what direction he moved. I'm going to give you this in pieces, she says. Not because I'm protecting you. You don't need that, and I won't insult you with it. Because some of what I have to tell you will make it very difficult to hear what comes after. And you need to hear all of it. Palpatine is a Sith Lord, she says. The room does not change. The light does not change. His face does not change. Not immediately. He receives the information the way a structure receives an impact. Nothing visible on the surface, everything happening underneath. Not a sympathizer, not someone who uses Sith language for political effect. He is Darth Sidious. He has been the Dark Lord of the Sith for his entire political career. This war, the Clone War, he started it. He engineered the creation of the Separatist movement and the Republic's response to it simultaneously. He controls both sides. No, he says, very low, not a denial, a reflex. The sound a person makes when the ground moves. He has been training Dooku since before the war began. He ordered Dooku's assassination when Dooku became more liability than asset. He has been your mentor and your enemy simultaneously for your entire life. That is not... He was there when you were tested on Coruscant. He has known exactly who you are and what you are capable of, since before Qui-Gon found you. He chose you specifically, not the way the Force chose you, the way a predator selects. With patience, with complete certainty about the outcome. She watches his face. He has been preparing you for a specific purpose for 11 years. Anakin stands. He cannot help it. His body will not remain still with this inside it. He paces 3 steps toward the wall, 3 steps back. The Force light follows him without being asked, adjusting to keep the room evenly lit. Why are you telling me this now? He asks. If you've known, if you've lived 20 years knowing. Because the alternative is watching you find out at the worst possible moment, in the worst possible state, with no one beside you who knows what is happening. That is exactly how it worked before. He needed you alone and terrified. He made sure of it. He has been making sure of it for years. She lets that land. Sit down. I'm not finished. He stops pacing. He sits. The clones have a chip in their brains, she says. Every single one of them. It was installed during their development on Kamino. It responds to a signal that can be broadcast across the HoloNet, a command Palpatine has already prepared, that he intends to use to execute every Jedi in the galaxy simultaneously. In the field. Mid-battle. Their commanders, their officers, every Force-sensitive within reach. All of them at once with no warning. Fives, he says, barely audible. Yes, she says. He closes his eyes. Fives was right, he says. He was right, and I stood there, and I let him. He stops. The sentence does not complete itself. It does not need to. The guilt comes off him like heat from metal left in a twin sun afternoon. Waves of it, visible in the way his jaw sets and his hands close into fists against his knees. I told Rex he was compromised. I said he was. You had no framework for what you were hearing, she says. The evidence was fragmented. Palpatine made him appear unstable. He used the Force to do it, in that private meeting, and Fives was already neurologically compromised from having his own chip removed. You were presented with a dying, erratic soldier making extraordinary claims with no corroborating evidence. You could not have known. It still matters. Rex never let it go. He kept the testimony. In the version of events I lived, it was Rex who eventually helped us understand what the chips were. She holds his gaze. What you do with that knowledge now is what determines what his death meant. A long breath. In, out. The fists slowly open. What else? He says. She is quiet for a moment, not performing reluctance, actually taking the moment because she has rehearsed this in her head across years and it has still not become easy. There is one more thing, she says. Tell me, he says. I need you to stay with me for all of it, not just hear it. Whatever he sees in her face makes him straighten slightly. Tell me, he says again. In the future that happened, Palpatine tells you that Padme is dying, that the only way to save her is through a power of the dark side that the Jedi have never taught you. He tells you this at the exact moment you are most terrified, most alone, and most convinced that no one in the Order can help you. He has spent years making sure you would be alone at that moment. He has spent years making sure you would believe that he is the only one who sees you clearly, the only one who understands what you are capable of, the only one who genuinely cares whether you survive. Anakin says nothing. He is very still. You believe him. You turn, not in some abstract sense, not a small thing. You turn completely. You give yourself to him. You help him destroy the Order. A breath. You kill people I loved. People you loved. Ahsoka, children, Anakin, she says. The Force light contracts, slightly, involuntarily. The room gets a fraction darker. He builds you a suit, life support, black armor, because in the moment you finally commit to him completely, you are nearly killed, and he lets it happen. He stands at the top of a ridge and watches you burn, and when enough of you is left to be useful, he puts you back together as his instrument, as something that walks and speaks and fights but belongs entirely to him. Her voice does not break, but it slows the way a person slows when they are carrying something over uneven ground. You serve him for 23 years. And Padme, she dies anyway. On a medical table, they said it was a broken heart. Grief, she survived the birth. She survived long enough to name them, but she could not survive what you had become. She does not remember crossing the room. She is simply there, one hand on his shoulder, not gripping, not consoling. Present. The way she learned to be present with the crystals. Open, not solving, not retreating. What follows is not cinematic. There is nothing clean about it. He is breathing wrong, short and high, nothing reaching the bottom of his lungs. His hands are on the floor and they are shaking. The Force around him does what the Force around Anakin Skywalker always does when the wall comes down. The building groans. A crack splits the plaster of the far wall with a sound like a branch breaking in cold weather. Dust falls from the ceiling in a thin, steady curtain. He is not doing this deliberately. Deliberate requires control, and control requires a self that is currently not available. Ahsoka takes both his hands, not a grip, a contact. She speaks quietly in a rhythm, even and steady, the way you speak to bring something back from a very far place. Breathe, she says. In, out, just breathe. Because I've already lived the version where this happens, she says. I have been through the worst of it. I am standing on the other side of it, holding your hands and telling you. It does not have to happen. That is why I am here. That is the only reason I could not walk away. The crack in the wall stops spreading. The dust settles. His breathing finds the bottom of his lungs again, slowly, unevenly, then less unevenly. You're not afraid, he says. Not of this. Not anymore, she says. How? He asks. She thinks about the world between worlds, about standing on a pathway outside of time and watching versions of every moment she had ever lost, playing out behind windows she could almost reach through, about the specific weight of choosing which window, about what it costs to walk away from the ones she did not choose. I learned that the Force does not abandon the people it has broken, she says. It only asks them to be broken open rather than broken apart. There is a difference. The processors hum, the city breathes. What do we do, he says. She releases his hands. She stands. In the Force light, the white of her markings and the white of the walls behind her are almost the same color. She looks for a moment like something that belongs to both the present and somewhere much further away. First, she says, we get you a weapon that no one can track. She knows where he is before they reach the level. Not because she has been here before. She has not precisely, not this specific corridor in this specific hour, but the Force is showing her the way it always shows her, in the language it has always used with her specifically, which is not language at all. It is direction. A pull, like the slight lean of a compass needle, so subtle that someone who did not know to look for it would mistake it for their own intention. She follows it. You know these levels, Anakin says quietly, moving through a maintenance corridor between two chemical processor units, the walls sweating with condensation, the air thick with industrial solvent, and something organic underneath it, the smell of a place that processes waste from levels above. Not these levels specifically, she says. Then why are you navigating like you've walked this route before? I've navigated 100 levels like it, she says. The architecture of desperation is consistent. People in desperate circumstances need the same things and occupy the same kinds of spaces, the same sight lines, the same access to exits, the same proximity to systems they can exploit. She steps over a section of exposed pipe without looking down at it. Once you understand the logic, the specific geography is secondary. That's not comforting, he says. He is moving well. She noticed it from the first moment on the temple steps, the way he reads terrain, the way his hand never drifts far from his saber hilt without him appearing to be guarding it. 2 decades of war compressed into a body that is still technically a young man's. He moves through level 1330 the way water moves through rock, finding the course of least resistance, but capable, when necessary, of cutting through anything. She moves differently. She does not project outward. She receives. The distinction is not visible to anyone watching. But in the Force, it is the difference between a torch and an open window. One announces itself, one simply allows what is already present to pass through. What is already present 3 corridors ahead and descending is wrong. Not loud, dark side signatures in the underworld are common enough to register as background noise, the accumulated residue of violence and desperation that has been soaking into these levels for centuries. This is different. This is focused. A point of concentrated dark energy moving through the ambient noise the way a blade moves through water, disturbing everything around it, leaving a wake. He's close, she says. I feel it, Anakin says. What is he? Something Palpatine has been building toward the Inquisitorius, she says. He doesn't have a formal designation yet. The program doesn't fully exist yet. But the candidates do. Force sensitives who couldn't hold together under Sith training, or who lacked the power for it, but who are capable enough to be useful for eliminating low-level threats. A pause. He killed a Jedi Knight 3 days ago. Someone who came down here following a thread about the chips. And the crystals, Anakin says. Still in the hilt, she says. Then we take them back, he says. They find him in a loading bay that hasn't been used for legitimate cargo in at least a generation. The bay doors are sealed with rust, and the floor is occupied by 3 different criminal concerns operating in separate corners with the careful territorial awareness of people who have negotiated an armed truce. Gambling equipment in the far left, a narcotics processing operation behind a jury-rigged privacy screen on the right. In the center, running a weapons inspection that involves other people's stolen property. A tall, gray-skinned figure with the particular stillness of someone who has learned that stillness reads as dangerous. He is Tyrellian. Long-limbed, pale, with the faint luminescent quality that Tyrellian skin carries in low light, almost beautiful in an unsettling way. He wears a civilian long coat over what is clearly modified body armor underneath. The lightsaber hilt at his hip is salvage. Mismatched components, clearly not original, but the blade it contains is real, and they are screaming. Ahsoka hears them from 30 meters away, not audibly. In the specific register the Force uses for objects that are suffering, a frequency below consciousness, felt in the teeth more than the ears. The crystals are not passive objects. They are alive in the way all Kyber is alive, and they have been carrying the weight of what has been poured into them with a kind of wordless, constant distress that the man wearing them either cannot hear or has chosen not to. She moves forward without consulting Anakin. He starts to follow. She holds up one hand, flat, still, the signal they used in the field for hold position, and he stops. His jaw tightens. He stays. The prototype notices her when she is 15 meters out. His eyes track to her with professional speed, assessing threat level, cataloging species, noting the absence of visible weapons, arriving at the conclusion that a Togruta teenager in civilian clothes is not a significant concern. He returns to his inventory. She closes the distance to 10 meters. He notices again, reassesses. Something in his threat calculation shifts not because she has done anything, but because she has not done anything and the specific quality of her not doing anything is starting to register as wrong. He ignites the stolen saber. The red blade fills the bay with ugly light. In it, the 3 criminal enterprises in the corners become very still and then very quietly begin to relocate toward exits. He opens with Form IV, an aerial opener, a spinning overhead strike with the theatrical confidence of someone who has used it to end encounters before it fully begins. The move commits his weight forward and his blade in a fixed arc, and it is, objectively, a good opener against most opponents. Ahsoka is not where she was when it lands. She has not moved quickly. She has moved correctly. 2 steps, a precise angle, reading the arc 3/4 of a second before he committed to it, placing herself in the only position from which the blade cannot be redirected to follow her. The strike completes against empty air. His weight is forward and wrong, and he has half a second before his momentum becomes a liability. She uses that half second. Her elbow contacts the nerve cluster at the base of his skull, the exact location, the exact pressure, not a strike, a placement. Surgical, the nerve cluster does not require force to respond to. It requires precision. He crumples. She catches the saber hilt as it leaves his hand. She does not catch it dramatically. She extends her hand and the force brings it to her palm in the same motion, unremarkable, like picking something up from a shelf she can see clearly. He is on the floor, breathing, unconscious. He will wake with a headache that lasts 4 days and a profound uncertainty about what happened to him. Anakin is beside her. He arrived in the time between the crumple and the catch, covering the 30 meters with the speed that is one of the most purely Anakin things about him, present the moment he might be needed. "You could have told me you had it handled," he says. "You would have wanted to help," she says. "I still want to help," he says. "I know." She turns the hilt over in her hands, feeling the weight of it. The crystals inside pulse against her palms even through the casing, distress, constant, and low. That's the difference between us. They go deeper, not far, 2 levels below the loading bay, in a maintenance alcove sealed from the main corridor by a heavy door that Ahsoka opens the same way she opened the housing block. Precise, traceless. Under 2 seconds, the alcove is small. Pipes run along all 4 walls, warm to the touch, carrying heated water to levels above. The ambient sound is the rush and gurgle of that water, steady and almost gentle, the closest thing to natural sound that exists down here. She sits. She opens the hilt. The 2 crystals rest in the disassembled casing, dark red, the red of very old dried blood, the red of something that was once clear and has had its clarity replaced with something that should not be there. They are approximately thumb length. They catch the faint light from the corridor gap under the door and hold it, refract it, give back nothing clean. Anakin sits across from her. He has not asked what she is doing. He is watching her face and waiting. She cups the crystals in both palms, closes her hands around them loosely, not gripping, not applying pressure, just contact, just presence. And then she opens. Not outward. There is no force projection here, no broadcast of intent or will or power. She simply stops maintaining the careful architecture of her own boundaries, the structural separation between self and not self that every force-sensitive learns to construct, and that she has been building and refining for 60 years of accumulated living. She lets the walls go. The crystals respond immediately. What comes through is not pain exactly. It is the accumulated record of pain. Everything that has been poured into these crystals since they were taken, every act of violence they were present for, every moment of fear or rage or calculated cruelty that their current carrier has directed through them. It arrives not as image or sound, but as weight. Sudden, enormous, the specific gravity of suffering that has been compressed into an object too small to hold it. Ahsoka breathes through it. She does not try to counter it. She does not reach for the light side as a weapon to drive out the dark. That is not what the crystal is asking for. The crystal is not asking to be rescued. It is asking to be heard. There is a difference, and the difference is everything. She brings her own weight to meet it. Not as a weapon either. As a companion, the weight she carries, the memory of a burning suit of black armor descending from a shuttle ramp, the years of living in the knowledge that she had stood at the exact divergence point and walked the wrong way, the grief that does not go away simply because you have learned to move with it. She brings all of it forward and sets it beside the crystal's suffering without agenda, without needing anything from the meeting. I know this, she tells it, in the wordless language that is the only language this requires. I know what it is to have darkness poured into you until you cannot remember what you sounded like before. I know the weight of it. I am not here to take it from you. I am here because I understand it. The crystal hears her. The red does not drain, it retreats. There is a difference. Draining implies something taken. Retreating implies something choosing to move. The darkness acknowledging that it is a visitor in a space that belonged to something else first. Stepping back from a door it has been holding shut. The color moves through stages she has only seen twice in her life. Red to the deep red of garnet, garnet to the pale rose of early light, rose to pink, pink to a color that is almost white but carries the faintest warmth of rose underneath it. And then white, pure and still, giving back the faint light from under the door without distorting it. The second crystal watches what happens to the first, and follows faster, as if the path has been cleared, as if the first crystal's willingness to be changed has shown it that the change is survivable. Rose to white in the time it takes Ahsoka to draw one slow breath. She opens her hands. Anakin has been completely still for the entire duration. She becomes aware of this as she surfaces. The specific quality of his stillness, which is not his natural state and which means he has been holding himself there by conscious effort, not moving because moving might disturb something he did not want to disturb. He says nothing for a long moment. He is looking at the crystals in her open palms. I have never felt anything like that, he says. Like what? She asks. Whatever you just did to the Force. I have felt people use it as a weapon, as a tool, as everything the temple teaches. I have never felt someone use it as a conversation. She begins to assemble the hilt configuration around the two white crystals. Her hands know this work, not from memory of having done it before, but from the bone-deep familiarity of having carried these sabers for years in a life that now exists in her, only as knowledge. The components fit together in her hands the way they are supposed to. The weight settles as it should. She knows, before she ignites them, exactly what they will feel like. The Jedi teach the Force as a gift you receive, she says. The Sith teach it as a power you take. Neither of them is entirely wrong. Both of them are missing something. Something in the Force around her settles. The way a sound settles into resonance when the correct frequency is found. What are they missing? He asks. She ignites both blades. White, completely still. Not the aggressive, unstable hum of dark side crystals burning against a user they were never meant to serve. Not the steady, institutional hum of a temple-issued saber. Something quieter than both. Something that sounds, at its core, like resolution. That it is also a weight you carry, she says. The white light fills the alcove, reflects off the sweating pipes, off the durasteel walls, off Anakin's face, and for a moment, in that light he looks the way she has always kept him in the truest part of her memory. Not the armor, not the mask, just this, 20 years old and unmarked and looking at something he has never seen before. She holds it, just for a moment, then she clips both sabers to her belt and stands. We have work to do, she says. Obi-Wan finds them first, not through surveillance, not through the temple's tracking systems, not through any mechanism of institutional authority. He finds them the way he has always found Anakin, through the Force, through the specific signature of a presence he has known for 11 years, a presence as recognizable to him as his own breathing. He follows it through the mid-levels of Coruscant on a gray morning, leaving his speeder 3 blocks out and walking the remainder on foot. and he arrives at the secondary meet point Ahsoka has been using, a covered transit platform on level 2800, public enough to be unremarkable, quiet enough at this hour to have corners that a conversation can occupy. Mace Windu is with him. This is not a coincidence. Obi-Wan came to Mace because he did not know what he was walking toward, and Mace came because he has been tracking the anomaly of Anakin's Force signature for 3 weeks. The specific wrongness of it, the quality of a presence that should be an open flame and has become, suddenly and without explanation, a controlled burn. Mace Windu does not ignore anomalies. He follows them to their source. Yoda arrives 7 minutes later. He does not explain how he knew to come. He never does. They find Ahsoka and Anakin in the corner of the platform that faces the transit lane. Backs to the wall, full sight lines in every direction. The position of people who have been operating in spaces where no one is coming to help them. Obi-Wan looks at Ahsoka, at the white sabers at her belt, at the quality of her stillness, which is not the stillness of a teenager who left an organization 3 weeks ago. "You left the Order," he says. "Yes," she says. "Then you have been operating outside any mandate, any oversight, any oversight." "Obi-Wan," she says, just his name, spoken with a familiarity so complete and so unperformed that it stops him mid-sentence the way a hand placed flat against a door stops it. He stares at her. She is looking at him with the expression of someone who knows him, not as a Jedi Knight knows a colleague, but as a person knows another person across a long span of shared history. The expression of someone who has spent years measuring themselves against his example and arrived at complicated conclusions. "I know you," she says. "I know what you are about to say, and I know you believe every word of it, and I know that your character is exceptional. I am not here to argue with your character. I'm here to tell you that the institution you are defending has been infiltrated at the highest level and has approximately 3 months to exist in any recognizable form if you do not listen to what I am about to tell you," she says. Mace Windu does not move from where he stands, which is 2 meters back and slightly to the left, a position that is not aggressive, but is not casual either. He is reading the scene with the totality of his attention, which is the most dangerous form of attention in the Jedi Order, and what he is reading is making the back of his neck tighten in a way he has learned, over many years, to take seriously. He looks at Ahsoka the way he looks at things that do not fit their category. "You left this order," he says. "You were offered reinstatement and you refused it. The Council extended that offer in good faith, and you—" "I don't claim authority," she says. "I offer information. You can choose to use it or not." She meets his eyes without deflection, "If you choose not to. Approximately 1,000 Jedi will be dead within 3 months, and the Republic will become an empire under the governance of a Sith Lord who has been sitting in the Chancellor's office for the entirety of your tenure on the Council." The transit lane beside them carries a steady stream of automated cargo vehicles. The sound of them is constant, a mechanical rhythm that does not care about the conversation happening 3 meters away. "Those are extraordinary claims," he says. "Yes, they are," she says. "You have evidence," he says. "I have foreknowledge which is not evidence by your standard," she says. "I also have the Fives conspiracy data. Rex has kept it, and Anakin was present when Fives died and heard fragments of it directly. And I have." She pauses, not for effect, but because the next piece requires him to be ready for it. "I have the fact that Nala C of Kamino will confirm, if you contact her today, that a deactivation broadcast was issued to all clone inhibitor chips 6 days ago, on a frequency encoded in the original cloning contract specifications. Specifications that did not originate from Kamino." Mace Windu is quiet. The cargo vehicles pass. The chips are deactivated. The clones are free. "That part is done," she says. She does not allow him the space to interrupt. What is not done is Palpatine. Yoda has been standing to the side of all of this, apart from it in the way he is sometimes apart from things, present without inserting himself, listening to the conversation below the conversation, the one that happens in the Force between people who are saying words at each other. He has his gimmer stick. He has his eyes which are half closed in the particular way that means he is paying more attention than anyone who does not know him would guess. He steps forward. He is very small. He looks up at Ahsoka. She looks down at him, and something happens in the quality of the look. She does not look down at him the way a young person looks at someone old, with the particular cocktail of deference and condescension that most beings cannot entirely suppress. She looks at him the way a contemporary looks at a peer, the way someone looks at a person they have spent a long time thinking about and are now, for the first time, seeing directly. "Ahsoka Tano," he says. Changed you have. Different, your presence in the forces. Old, his ears shift slightly, a millimeter of movement that is, for Yoda, the equivalent of leaning forward. As though walked very far you have, to places the living do not often reach. Yes, she says. And what found you at the end of your walking, he asks. The transit platform hums around them. 3 Jedi Masters and 2 people who exist somewhere outside every category the Order has, all standing in the gray Coruscant morning. That the galaxy is larger than any order, she says, and that the Force does not end at the boundary of anyone's doctrine. Yoda regards her, the half-closed eyes open slightly. Something in him, the 900-year accumulation of it, the part that has learned to recognize the specific texture of a truth it does not yet have the language for, goes very still. He turns to Mace Windu. Hear her warning, we will, he says. Master Yoda, we cannot simply accept the claims of a... Mace begins. Her presence in the Force you have felt, Yoda says. Not a question. An old soul she carries, the weight of years not hers by right. The gimmer stick taps once against the platform. Trust this, I do. But he is, above all things, a man who understands the arithmetic of a room. And in this room, Yoda has spoken with the finality that Yoda reserves for the things that are not negotiable. You knew about Padme, Obi-Wan says quietly to Ahsoka, and the sharpness has gone out of his voice, replaced by something more careful. Yes, she says. For how long, he asks. Since before I came back, she says. And you didn't think that was information the Council. The Council's attachment doctrine was one of the primary mechanisms Palpatine used to isolate Anakin, she says. He could not have built the specific loneliness he needed in someone who was allowed to love openly. Bringing it to the Council would have triggered a process that would have created exactly the isolation we were trying to prevent. She looks at him. I know that is not the answer you wanted. He is quiet for a long moment. No, he says. But it is the honest one. They find an empty office 2 levels up. A Republic administrative annex, half its space unused at this hour. Someone produces a portable holo projector. They arrange themselves around it without ceremony. Ahsoka leads the briefing. Not Anakin, not the 3 council members who between them carry centuries of combined experience and institutional authority. Her. She does not ask permission to lead it. She simply begins, and the room arranges itself around her, the way rules sometimes arrange themselves around the person who knows where they are going. The briefing is not long. She does not waste words. She lays it out in sequence. The architecture of Palpatine's 50-year operation, the clone army as its instrument, Order 66 as its trigger, the transformation of the Republic as its objective. She names the sources for each claim. She identifies what can be independently verified and what requires trust to accept. She does not oversell the parts that require trust. She presents them as what they are and allows the room to decide. Mace Windu interrupts twice, both times with good questions. The questions of a mind that is doing the work of genuinely testing the logic rather than looking for an exit from it. She answers both without impatience. Obi-Wan does not interrupt. He listens with his arms crossed and his eyes on the holo projector, and the expression on his face is the expression of a man assembling a picture that has always had pieces missing and is watching them arrive, one by one from a direction he did not expect. The Fives data, Obi-Wan says when she finishes. Rex has it. On his personal comm unit, she says, he has carried it since Fives died. He has never deleted it. You're certain, he says. Rex does not delete things that matter, she says. Obi-Wan looks at Anakin. Anakin, who has been standing at the edge of the group in the particular way he stands when he is managing a great deal and is determined not to let it show, looks back. Is this all of it? Is this true? Obi-Wan asks. Yes, Anakin says. How do you know? Obi-Wan asks. Because she knew about Fives, Anakin says. She knew what he said, word for word, before I told her. She knew about the meeting with Palpatine, about what he did to Fives in that room. She knew things that were never in any report, that only 2 people in the galaxy knew, me and Rex. A pause, and because she knew about Padme, the room absorbs this, the weight of what it means, that Anakin Skywalker, who guards the secret of his marriage with everything he has just confirmed it in front of 3 council members, lands differently on each of them. Mace Windu's jaw tightens by a fraction. Obi-Wan's eyes close briefly. Yoda makes no visible response at all, which means he is making every internal response at once. The question of attachment doctrine is a conversation for after Palpatine is dead, Ahsoka says, before the marriage becomes the subject. Right now, I need to talk about how we kill him. Mace Windu looks at her sharply. He will not be arrested. He will not be tried. She says he has controlled the Senate, the courts, and the legal architecture of this republic for 50 years. The moment you attempt a legal process, he will use that process to frame the Jedi as traitors. And the clones, even without the chips, will face a choice between their commanders and the republic they were built to serve. That is a situation we do not want to create. She looks at each of them in turn. He ends in his office, directly, with enough force that there is no recovery and no reframe. You've thought about this for a long time, Mace Windu says, and it is not agreement, but it is not refusal. 20 years, she says. And in those 20 years, what was the outcome? He asks. In those 20 years, no one tried, she says. That is what the outcome of not trying looks like. The holo projector hums between them. The gray Coruscant light comes through the office windows and falls across the floor without warmth. Together we plan, Yoda says, and his voice carries the specific weight of a decision being made, not announced. But lead us to the moment Skywalker will. Palpatine will not have prepared for what he cannot anticipate. The ancient eyes move to Anakin. The piece of this board he believes he owns. You are. Anakin holds Yoda's gaze. He does not look at Ahsoka, but she feels him orient toward her in the Force, the specific orientation of someone checking a fixed point before they step into uncertain ground. He calls me to his office, Anakin says. He always has, and this time you will not go alone. The plan begins to take shape in the room, piece by piece, the way a structure takes shape, foundation first, then the weight-bearing elements, then the details that make it something a person can actually stand inside. Outside, Coruscant moves through its morning without knowing what is being built 3 floors above its traffic lanes. The hologram arrives at midday. Anakin is in the housing block when it comes through. Sitting at the work table with the holoprojector they have been using as a planning surface, reviewing transit routes from the Senate district to extraction points Ahsoka has identified. He has been reviewing them for 2 hours. He has them memorized. He is reviewing them anyway because his hands need something to do, and his mind needs something to grip that is not the thing it keeps returning to. The incoming signal is on his personal comm frequency, the one that routes through the GAR military network that has been active since he was knighted, that exactly 3 people contact him on with any regularity. The identifier reads, Office of the Supreme Chancellor. He lets it run for 1 full second before accepting. In that second, he does everything Ahsoka has prepared him to do. He pulls his Force presence inward, compresses it, wraps it in the operational calm he has learned to construct in these past weeks. The deliberate muting of the open flame that Palpatine has been reading for 11 years. He becomes as much as he is able, unreadable. Then he accepts the call. The hologram resolves into the small blue figure of an elderly man in Chancellor's robes, hands folded on his desk, the Coruscant skyline visible through the window behind him. The performance of a man who governs carefully and is concerned, always, with the well-being of those around him. Anakin, my boy, Palpatine says, I hope I am not interrupting something important. Not at all, Chancellor, Anakin says. I have been thinking about you, Palpatine says. The Outer Rim campaign has been taxing on everyone, but you carry a particular burden. Your commitment to this republic is something I have always admired. I wonder sometimes if the Council appreciates the full weight of what they ask of you. The script is familiar. It has always been familiar. Anakin has heard variations of this opening. The Chancellor's concern, the subtle underscore of Council inadequacy, the careful positioning of Palpatine as the one person who truly sees, more times than he can count. He received it for years as exactly what it appeared to be, warmth, mentorship, the rare experience of being seen by someone powerful. He receives it now as what it is. You're generous, Chancellor, Anakin says. I manage. You always do, Palpatine says. That is precisely what concerns me. A pause, measured, avuncular. The pause of a man who chooses his moments. I wondered if you might visit me this evening. A private conversation, nothing formal. I find our discussions are often more valuable to me than a dozen council briefings. He is watching Anakin's face in the hologram. Anakin knows this. He watches for the specific micro-expressions he has cataloged across years of these conversations. The slight widening of the eyes when praise lands as intended, the fractional relaxation around the jaw when the resentment seeding takes hold. The tells of a young man who wants desperately to be chosen. He finds none of them. The absence registers. Barely, a flicker, a fractional recalibration, and then the performance resettles, smooth and complete. "Of course, Chancellor," Anakin says. "This evening." "Wonderful," Palpatine says. "I look forward to it, my boy." The hologram dissolves. Anakin sits in the silence that follows and breathes. Then he picks up the comm unit and sends a single word to Ahsoka's frequency. "Tonight." He suspects something, she says. They are all present. Herself, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace, Yoda, the housing block common room, the planning surface between them. The late afternoon light through the high, narrow windows falls in amber columns that do not reach the floor. "He suspects me," Anakin says. "He couldn't read me on the call. He's been able to read me on every call for 11 years, and this time he couldn't." He pauses. He adapted in under 2 seconds. He never hesitated in the performance. But he noticed. "Then he'll be prepared for a confrontation," Mace Windu says. "He's always prepared for a confrontation." "That is the wrong frame," she says. She looks at each of them. "He is not prepared for the specific confrontation we are bringing him. He has run the variables on Anakin arriving angry, arriving afraid, arriving manipulated, arriving as an unwilling enemy. He has not run the variable of Anakin arriving knowing everything, with a strike team already in position and a plan that was built around his specific psychology, a pause, and he has not run the variable of me." "You're certain he doesn't know about you," Obi-Wan says. "He knows I exist. He knows I left the Order," she says. "In the version of events I lived, the first time I registered as a significant threat to him was on a planet called Malachor, 22 years from now. In this timeline, I have been operating in the underworld, below his sensor range, away from the force environment of the upper levels, where his perception is strongest. He has felt a disturbance, something wrong, something that doesn't fit, but he has not been able to identify the source. Until tonight." Obi-Wan says. "Yes," she says. "The moment I walk through his door, he will know. His perception is too refined to miss what I am at close range." "And that does not concern you," Mace Windu says. She looks at him. The look is not dismissive. It is the look of a person who has considered this specific question from every direction and arrived at a conclusion that is not comfort, but is something more durable. "It concerns me exactly enough to prepare for it," she says. The planning session runs for 3 hours. Ahsoka briefs them on Palpatine's fighting style with the specificity of someone who has studied recordings that do not yet exist. Form 7, Juyo, and its Sith variant, which differs from any temple-sanctioned version in its willingness to use the practitioner's own pain and rage as fuel. She describes the Force lightning, the volume of it, the radius, the way it prioritizes disabling over killing in an enclosed space because a disabled opponent can be used and a dead one cannot. She describes the way he will immediately attempt to separate them, to create isolation, because isolation is the environment in which he is most effective, and a coordinated group is the environment in which he is least. She tells them he will try to use Anakin, not through the lightning, not through the blade, through words, through the voice that has been reaching into Anakin's specific wounds for 11 years with surgical patience. He will try it even in the middle of the confrontation, even when the situation has moved beyond the point where it should logically work, because it has always worked before and the pattern is too deep for him to abandon it quickly. "He will say your name," she says to Anakin directly. "He will say my boy. He will find the specific fear, the one we talked about in Naboo, and he will pull on it. You need to know that when it happens, you will feel it. Not because it will be true, but because the architecture of it has been built in you over 11 years, and it does not dismantle in 3 weeks. You will feel the pull. You do not have to follow it. I need you to know it in your hands, not just in your head," she says. He looks at her. A beat. "I know it in my hands," he says. The Senate District at evening is a different city from the Senate District at midday. The pedestrian traffic thins. The administrative machinery of the Republic settles into its overnight rhythms, the overnight staff, the security rotations, the skeleton crew of a government that never fully sleeps but reduces after dark to its essential functions. The buildings remain lit. They are always lit, this close to the center of galactic governance. The light's a constant assertion that something important is always happening here. Ahsoka and Anakin walk from the transit stop to the Senate building on foot. She insisted on foot. Every speeder, every registered vehicle, every transit record creates a data point that Palpatine's surveillance network can read in retrospect. On foot, in the evening pedestrian flow, they are 2 people among thousands. She walks at his left shoulder, half a step behind, not the position of a student, the position of someone who has chosen their placement carefully relative to the threat geometry ahead. Her white sabers are at her belt. She has not attempted to conceal them. This was a deliberate choice. Concealment would require a cover identity, a story, a set of details that can be checked. Visibility in Coruscant's Senate District is its own kind of cover. People who are hiding do not display unusual equipment openly. People who display unusual equipment openly are usually security personnel of some kind, and security personnel are furniture in this district. Obi-Wan is in position, Anakin says quietly. Yes, she says, Mace and Yoda are in position, she says. 2 levels below the office in the maintenance corridor we identified. They will move when I signal. And if you can't signal, he asks, they'll hear the office. Trust that, she says. He is quiet for half a block. He's already feeling us, he says. He has been since we entered the district, she says. Then why? He starts. Because a trap is only a trap if you don't know it's there. We know it's there. She does not slow her pace, does not look at him. Her eyes are tracking the building entrance, the guard positions, the sight lines from the upper floors, which makes it our trap, not his. The entrance guards see Anakin Skywalker and stand aside. They see the young woman at his shoulder and assess her as escort, a reasonable assumption in this district where everyone moves with an entourage of some kind. No one stops them. They cross the lobby, take the lift. The floors count upward. When we walk out of this building tonight, Anakin says, very quiet. Yes, she says. He's gone, he says. And the Republic, he starts, will be a mess, she says. There will be years of work. The institutions he corrupted don't self-correct because he stops being present to operate them. Bail Organa will be instrumental. He's already been building a case against the Chancellor's emergency powers expansion. With the evidence we give him, it becomes something the Senate can act on. She pauses. But the irreversible part, the mechanism that could not be undone, that ends tonight. The lift slows, stops, the doors open onto a corridor that Ahsoka has seen in her memory for 20 years of a life she has already lived. The carpet, the lighting, the specific quality of the silence that exists this close to the most powerful office in the galaxy. She has never stood in it. She knows every meter of it. At the end of the corridor, the doors to the Chancellor's office are closed. Ready, Anakin says. Not a question. I've been ready for 20 years, she says. They walk. The carpet absorbs their footsteps. The gold light of the corridor falls across them and does not warm either of them. The doors at the end grow larger with each step in the way that important doors do. As if the approach compresses, as if the destination gathers weight the closer you get to it. Ahsoka reaches out through the Force, finds Obi-Wan below them, steady, present, the specific quality of his Force signature that she has known since she was a child, and that means ready. Finds Mace, tightly controlled, the compressed readiness of a weapon that has been cocked. Finds Yoda, and his presence in the Force is what it has always been, a depth she cannot find the bottom of. She finds Palpatine, on the other side of the doors, sitting, waiting. The Force around him is the void, the specific, engineered absence that she has only felt in one other place in her life, the shrine beneath the Jedi Temple, the dark side architecture of 1,000 years of deliberate corruption, but mobile, contained, wearing a human face. He already knows they are here. He has known since the lift. The doors open. The office is exactly as she knew it would be, not from memory of having stood in it. She never did in the life she carries, but from the recordings, the floor plans, the testimony of people who survived long enough to describe it, the circular geometry, the enormous desk positioned to place anyone approaching it at a disadvantage of distance and elevation, the window behind it, floor to ceiling, the full panorama of the Coruscant night, the city spread out in every direction like a circuit board lit from within, billions of lights that do not know what is happening in this room. The furniture is arranged in a specific pattern that she has been thinking about for 3 days, not aesthetic. Functional. Every piece positioned relative to Palpatine's desk in a way that channels movement, that makes certain paths natural and certain paths awkward. The office has been designed, over decades, as a fighting environment. The man sitting behind the desk has had 50 years to build this space around his specific needs. She notes every piece, every angle, every surface that could become a projectile. Palpatine sits with his hands folded. The lamp on his desk is the primary light source, warm, directional, designed to illuminate the person seated behind it while leaving the rest of the office in comparative shadow. He is dressed in his chancellor's robes, the deep burgundy of Republic institutional authority, and his face carries the expression it always carries in these private audiences: warmth, concern, the careful performance of a man who has been waiting specifically for you and is genuinely glad you arrived. His eyes go to Ahsoka in the first fraction of a second. "Anakin, my boy," he says. And Ahsoka Tano. A beat so brief it would be invisible to anyone not watching for it. "I had heard you had returned. How unexpected." "And wonderful, Chancellor," she says. She ignites both white blades. 3 seconds of silence. The white light fills the office, not the aggressive directional light of the desk lamp, but something that comes from everywhere at once that reaches the corners and the shadows and leaves nothing unlit. The 2 blades hum at their specific frequency, which is quieter than any blade she has ever carried before. Quieter than the room expects. Palpatine does not move. He is reading her. She knows he is reading her because she has spent 3 weeks preparing for exactly this moment. And preparation requires understanding what the other person is doing, and what he is doing right now is the most comprehensive force assessment she has ever been subjected to. It arrives not as pressure but as attention, the focused perception of a being who has refined his ability to read force signatures across 50 years of needing to know precisely what every person in his vicinity is, and what they want, and what they fear. What he reads from Ahsoka, the age, he feels it immediately, the specific density of a force presence that does not match its container, the impossible weight of years that this body has not lived. He has encountered force ghosts and Sith spirits, and the echoes of powerful beings in sacred spaces. He has never encountered this, a living person carrying the accumulated experience of a life that has not yet happened. The white sabers. He understands them. He knows what it takes to purify a bled crystal. He knows the level of force mastery and emotional depth that process requires. He runs the arithmetic of a 16-year-old performing that purification, and the arithmetic does not resolve. And then the recognition, arriving not as thought but as the force itself showing him something he does not want to see. This is an echo of a future that no longer exists. This is someone who has already seen him, already seen the Empire, already lived in the wreckage of everything he has built toward. She did not come here blind. She came here having studied him for a lifetime. He has been anticipated. For the first time in 50 years, in this office that he has made into the most controllable environment in the galaxy, Darth Sidious has been anticipated. The warmth leaves his face. Not gradually. It is simply there, and then it is not. The way a light goes out when the power is cut. What remains is something that has been behind the warmth for 50 years, waiting with the patience of a thing that has always known it would eventually be seen. "How?" he says. Not a question, a demand. The voice has dropped 2 registers, stripped of the careful modulation of the Chancellor's public instrument, down to something older, something that has not needed to perform in decades. "Does it matter?" she says. "You have already seen what you came here to prevent," he says. "Yes," she says, "and yet here you stand, knowing what I am, knowing what I am capable of." He unfolds his hands and places them flat on the desk, a small movement, almost nothing, except that the force around him shifts with it like weather changing. Interesting. The word lands in the room and stays there. She has heard it described in the life she carries by people who survived encounters with him. The specific danger of his curiosity, which is more threatening than his anger because his anger can be anticipated and his curiosity cannot. When Darth Sidious finds something interesting, it means he has begun calculating how to use it. She does not give him time to finish the calculation. He moves without transition, from stillness to violence, in a single motion that does not announce itself, that does not build from anything visible. The desk is between them, and it is not between them, because he is no longer behind it. The force burst hits the space 3 meters in front of Ahsoka with the weight of a collapsing structure, a compression of dark side energy that would have sent most force sensitives backward through the wall. She is not in that space when it lands. 2 steps, precise angle. She read the geometry of his weight shift in the half-second before he committed to the attack, the fractional forward lean, the specific orientation of his shoulders, the way the force around him tightened like a breath being held before a blow. She placed herself in the one position from which the burst could not redirect to follow her, and she moved into it before he threw the punch. The force burst hits empty air, disperses against the far wall. A painting falls. Her white blade intercepts his lightsaber in the same motion she is still completing from the step, the red blade appearing in his hand from somewhere in his sleeve, crimson, and the contact between red and white sends a harmonic concussion through the office that punches outward in all directions. The window behind the desk does not shatter, It fractures, a web of cracks spreading from the center like ice breaking, the Coruscant night visible through the damage in fragments. Then the seal gives. The window goes. Cold night air floods in. The sound of the city, distant, omnipresent, the mechanical breathing of a civilization that does not know, arrives all at once. The desk lamp blows sideways and goes dark. The room's light sources reduced to 3, the ambient glow of the city through the destroyed window, and 2 lightsaber blades, red, white. Anakin ignites his. Blue, 3 colors in the dark. "I have killed masters of the Jedi Order," Palpatine says, and his voice carries even through the wind from the window. "Do not mistake resolve for foolishness." "I know," she says. "I've studied the records." He turns to Anakin. The voice shifts, not back to the Chancellor's warmth that is gone permanently now, but to something specific and targeted, the instrument tuned for a single string. "Anakin," he says, "you do not have to do this. She is using you. She has told you what you wanted to hear, shown you a version of events that serves her purpose, and brought you here to—" "I've heard enough of your voice," Anakin says. The office goes still for half a second. Palpatine has spent 11 years operating on Anakin Skywalker's specific frequencies, building his understanding of the young man's wounds, his needs, his fears, his hunger for recognition. He has delivered variations of this speech dozens of times, and it has always landed somewhere. It has always found something to catch on: resentment, or longing, or the raw nerve of feeling unseen by the people who were supposed to see him. He pulls on the thread, and finds nothing. The nothing is more alarming than resistance would have been. Resistance is a response. It means the thread is still attached, that the architecture is still present, even if the person is fighting against it. This is not resistance. The thread is gone. Whatever was on the other end of it has been moved, carefully to somewhere he cannot reach. He looks at Ahsoka, his yellow eyes in the dark of the broken office. "What did you take from him?" he says, quietly. The quietest and therefore the most dangerous thing he has said. "Nothing that was ever yours to use," she says. The blast shields come down. He triggers them from a pressure plate in the floor, his heel, a precise movement, and every exit in the office seals behind plates of reinforced durasteel that drop from concealed housing in the walls. The sound is a series of impacts, heavy and sequential, and when the last one lands, the office is closed. No exits. No light except the city glow through the destroyed window and the 3 blades. "The emergency systems will bring Senate guards to this floor in 4 minutes," he says. "You are sealed inside this room with me." He holds both his lightsabers, twin crimson blades, the configuration of someone who fights in tight spaces and prefers to overwhelm rather than outmaneuver. 4 minutes is more than sufficient. He attacks. Anakin meets the first strike. The impact of Sith blade against Jedi blade in an enclosed space produces a shock wave that rattles every sealed blast door and sends the broken fragments of the window's remaining frames spinning outward into the Coruscant night. The engagement moves instantly from standing to brutal. Palpatine is not an opponent who allows pace to develop, who tests and measures and builds. He is a weapon that fires at full charge from the first moment. He drives Anakin back 3 steps. 4, his twin blades create a geometry of attack that requires 2 defensive actions for every offensive one. Left blade high, right blade cutting low, and the recovery window between them is measured in milliseconds. Anakin holds. Not easily. The force of each impact travels up his arms and into his shoulders, the raw power behind the strikes amplified by dark side fury that has been building for 50 years and is now, finally, uncontained. He holds because he has been fighting at a level that should be impossible for his age since he was 19 years old, because his body is the body of the Chosen One in its physical prime, and because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, something has shifted in how he carries the Force. A clarity where there was turbulence, a channel where there was flood. Palpatine turns to Ahsoka. The lightning comes without preparation. A full discharge, both hands, the kind of volume that does not leave cover behind. Blue-white arcs fill the space between them, branching, seeking, the temperature of the air dropping in their wake. She puts her sabers away, clips them both to her belt, stands with empty hands. The lightning hits her. What she does in this moment is not a technique she was taught. It is the end result of everything the Mortis arc opened in her. The journey through a place where the Force existed in its most elemental form, where she touched something beneath the light and dark binary that the Jedi and Sith spend their lives arguing over. She came back from Mortis changed in ways she did not fully understand for years. The Force does not move through her the way it moves through other Jedi. It does not move through her the way it moves through anyone. It receives, it holds, it transforms. She opens to the lightning the way she opened to the crystals. Not deflecting, not enduring. Receiving, letting the energy arrive and find in her not a wall but a depth. The specific depth of someone who has processed catastrophe so many times that catastrophe has become a known quantity, something she can hold without being remade by it. The cost is immediate and severe. Every nerve in both arms lights up. The air in her lungs goes thin. She does not step back. She holds it. Palpatine is pouring everything he has into it. She can feel the genuine depth of what he is, and it is enormous. It is the most enormous thing she has ever held. But enormous is not infinite, and she has learned, across 60 years of a life she carries in her bones, that the things which seem infinite are almost never actually infinite. They are simply very, very large. She holds it for 2 seconds. 3. He stops. Half a second, maybe less. He has never seen this. In the full catalog of his experience, he has never seen a force-sensitive stand in the path of his lightning and receive it. There is no doctrine for this. There is no counter-calculation. He does not know what she is. And in the half-second that uncertainty holds him, in the fractional pause of a being who has never been uncertain in a fight in his adult life, Anakin moves. "What are you?" he says, directed at Ahsoka, and the question carries the voice of a man encountering something outside his map. "The consequence of your work," she says. She unclips her sabers. Both blades ignite, white in the dark office above the broken city. Phase 1 belongs to Sidious. This is not a surprise. Ahsoka prepared Anakin for it specifically, sitting in the housing block 3 days ago, walking him through the opening minutes of a fight with the most dangerous combatant alive the way a surgeon walks a student through a procedure that has no margin for error. He will be dominant early. That is by design. His entire combat philosophy is built around ending encounters before technique can compensate for power. You can determine what he does not have when it is over. What Sidious does not have when the first exchange completes is the room. He has driven Anakin back toward the sealed blast door on the north wall. 4 strikes, each one carrying the full weight of dark-side fury behind Sith steel. Each one designed to accumulate structural damage in the defender's guard, rather than to find a single killing opening. It is the combat philosophy of a being who fights in decades rather than seconds. He is not trying to win the exchange. He is trying to establish the geometry of the room as his. Ahsoka does not allow it. She moves into the space Anakin's retreat has opened. Not toward Sidious, not yet, but laterally, across the room, occupying the ground between Sidious and the window, the destroyed window with the Coruscant Knight behind it and the 300-meter drop below. He cannot push toward the window without coming through her. He cannot push further north without leaving his flank open to Anakin's recovery. The room is now 3 bodies, and the geometry between them is no longer his. He reads this in a fraction of a second and adapts. He always adapts. It is the one consistent truth about him. But adaptation requires a moment of recalculation, and in that moment Anakin's guard restores itself and the opening Sidious needed closes. The second exchange begins even. Sidious fights Anakin the way you fight a river, not by opposing the current, but by redirecting it, finding the places where the force of it can be turned against itself. Anakin's Form 5 is power and aggression, and the specific genius of a combatant who has always been stronger than everyone he faces, who has refined that strength into something precise. Against most opponents, there is no answer to it. You weather it until it exhausts itself, or you find the half-second between strikes where the commitment of the power becomes a liability. Sidious finds those half-seconds faster than anyone alive, but Anakin has been trained in the past 3 weeks by someone who has watched recordings of him fight for 20 years, and can describe every technical habit from memory. The overcommitment on the diagonal cut, the tendency to drop his left shoulder a fraction before a pommel strike, the gap in his guard that opens during recovery from a full-power overhead that he has never had to fix because no one he has fought was fast enough to exploit it. Ahsoka fixed them, one by one, in training sessions in the housing block using low-power practice sabers, correcting each habit with the patient repetition of someone who has done this before in a different context, and knows exactly what the unaddressed version costs. The habits are not gone. They are managed. And managed is enough. Sidious finds the shoulder drop and drives his blade toward the opening it signals. And the opening is not there. Anakin's guard is already correcting before the strike arrives. The deflection is clean. The counterattack that follows drives Sidious back a step. 1 step against Darth Sidious, in his own office. It is not nothing. You fight differently, Sidious says, his voice carrying even through the engagement, the psychological warfare running parallel to the physical because he cannot turn it off. It is as automatic as breathing. Someone has been adjusting your technique. A thrust, a riposte, a spinning feint that Anakin reads and answers. She has made you careful. You were never careful. Caution is not your nature. It is a cage she has built for you and called it training. Anakin says nothing. This is new. In every engagement Palpatine has ever run in this office, across every argument, every manipulation, every carefully engineered crisis, Anakin has always responded to provocation. He has always had words, always had the specific anger of a man who needs to be right out loud. The silence is a tell of its own kind. Something has been addressed. Something has been moved. She showed you a future that frightened you, Sidious continues, pressing. She used your fear to make you compliant. This is what the Jedi have always done. They take what you love and they weaponize it against. She showed me a future where I listened to you, Anakin says. He attacks, not the reactive aggression of a man whose anger has been triggered. Something colder, more deliberate. The aggression of someone who has decided. His blade comes in a sequence that Ahsoka drilled into him specifically for this moment. The combination that targets Sidious's preferred defensive withdrawal angle, that closes the space he retreats into, that removes the option of creating distance and resets. Sidious cannot withdraw along his preferred axis. He takes the engagement in place. For the first time, he is fighting someone who has studied him. Ahsoka enters. She does not announce it. She moves into the engagement from Sidious's right flank in the space that Anakin's driving attack has opened. Not to strike, not yet, but to be present, to be the thing that requires him to account for a second vector. She moves at the pace that Sidious cannot track without dividing his attention. And divided attention against Anakin Skywalker in full aggression is a problem that does not have a safe solution. The three of them fill the office, the destroyed window behind them, the sealed blast doors around them, the city glow coming in from outside, and the three blades the only light, red, blue, white, moving through the darkened geometries that have not existed before because the combination of these three people has never existed before. Sidious adjusts. He contracts his combat footprint, tightens the radius of his engagement, stops trying to control the full room, and focuses on maintaining a position from which he can address both angles. It is correct tactical thinking. It is also a concession, and he knows it. He reaches for the lightning again. Not a full discharge this time, targeted a single bolt directed at Anakin's weapon hand, designed to numb rather than destroy, to introduce a tremor into the grip that will slow the next strike by a fraction. Mace Windu's voice arrives through Ahsoka's comm, the blast doors. She reaches out through the Force and finds the pressure plate mechanism in the floor. She has known its location since they walked in, mapped it in the first 10 seconds, filed it as a variable to be addressed at the correct moment. The mechanism is not complex. She applies a single precise force manipulation to the housing and the blast doors release, crashing upward on their emergency hydraulics, every sealed exit opening simultaneously. Cold air from the corridor, the sound of the building's ventilation system reclaiming the space, and the specific quality of force presence that means Obi-Wan Kenobi is in the corridor. Sidious feels it, sees the blast doors open, runs the arithmetic in a fraction of a second. The room has changed, the exits are open, the number of opponents is about to increase. The geometry that was dangerous has become critical. He does the only thing that is left to him. He unleashes everything. It is not targeted. It is not surgical. It is the full volume of dark side power that Darth Sidious has spent 50 years accumulating and refining. Released without the restraint of strategy because strategy has been stripped away and what remains is the oldest and most honest expression of what he is. A being who has made every possible bargain with darkness and collected on every one of them. A force of will that has bent the galaxy to its purposes through patience and intelligence and the absolute refusal to accept any outcome it has not chosen. The lightning does not arc. It erupts, filling the office in every direction simultaneously, the temperature of the air dropping to nothing, the light of it washing out every other light source, the sound of it a sustained crack that blows every comm system on this floor. Mace catches it in his blade. The purple saber conducts the energy into the floor in the way that only Vapad can, the dark side feeding the technique that was designed to turn darkness back on itself, a closed loop that holds as long as the wielder holds. He holds. Obi-Wan creates a force barrier in the doorway. The lightning breaks against it and disperses. Ahsoka extends both hands. She opens. The same mechanics as the crystal purification. the same willingness to receive rather than deflect, the same understanding that the darkness is not the enemy of the light, it is the corruption of something that was once whole. And corruption can be received, and reception is not agreement, and agreement is not required for understanding. The force that moves through her is not the force as the Jedi teach it, and not the force as the Sith use it. It is something the Mortis arc burned into her when she was a child, a capacity for holding the full weight of what the force is without needing to categorize it, without needing it to be only one thing. The lightning arrives and she receives it. The cost is immediate and severe. Every nerve in both arms lights up with a specific agony of dark side energy running through organic tissue that was not designed to carry it, and she breathes through it, and she does not retreat from it, and she does not let it move her. She holds it for 2 seconds. 3. Sidious is pouring everything he has into it. She can feel the volume of what he is, the genuine depth of the power that has been building for 50 years, and it is enormous. But it is not more than she has already held tonight, and she has already held it once. She breathes, she releases the energy, not back at him, into the floor through the building's durasteel bones, conducting away from every living body in the room. The lightning grounds itself through the structure of the Senate building with a sound like something fundamental giving way. The office goes dark. Sidious stands at the center of it, breathing hard. For the first time in this engagement, she can hear him breathing, the sound of a body that has spent more than it intended. Anakin moves. He comes from Sidious's left, the blind side, the angle that Ahsoka has been managing for the last 3 minutes, keeping herself positioned there not to attack from it but to prevent Sidious from accounting for it. She has been holding that angle open the way you hold a door, waiting for the moment when the person who needs it is ready to walk through. Anakin walks through it. His blade comes in the specific sequence that Ahsoka designed for this exact position, not the aggressive Form 5 opener, not the power strike that announces itself, a measured Form 3 combination, Soresu-rooted that closes distance without commitment and arrives inside Sidious's guard before the recovery from the lightning expenditure has completed. Sidious parries, once. The strength behind it is diminished, not gone, but diminished against Anakin Skywalker is a different proposition than diminished against anyone else alive. Anakin feels the difference in the contact. He presses. Sidious's second parry is late by a fraction. His third does not complete. Anakin's blade takes both of Sidious's lightsabers in a single binding movement. The technique Ahsoka drilled him on specifically, the one that requires reading the opponent's grip pressure across 3 exchanges, to time correctly. He feels the resistance, the enormous resistant will of a being who has never been disarmed. He drives through it. The crimson blades fall, they hit the floor, roll, go dark as they separate from the hands that were carrying them. Sidious stands without his weapons. For the first time in his life, in this room, without anything left, he looks at Ahsoka, across the dark office, across the bodies of 5 people who should not have been able to do this, and have done it. His yellow eyes find her white blades. "You cannot kill me," he says, and the voice that comes out is neither the Chancellor nor the Sith Lord. It is something underneath both, something that has not spoken in a very long time, thin and cold. "You are not a killer, child." "I'm not a child," she says. "You would break the Jedi code," he starts. "I'm not a Jedi," she says. He attacks barehanded. Pure force, telekinetic fury, the last reserve of a being who has burned everything else. Every piece of furniture remaining in the office lifts and converges on the 5 of them simultaneously. The desk, the chairs, the fragments of the window frames still embedded in the walls. Anakin meets it. His force presence expands to fill the room. The chosen one in full, without restraint. The 20-year-old body carrying the power that has always been there and has never had a moment like this to spend it in. He takes the full weight of the telekinetic assault and holds it in place, and the effort of holding it is visible in every line of his body, and he holds it anyway. Ahsoka walks through the held debris. She walks without hurry, without aggression, the white blades at her sides, not raised, not threatening. She walks the way she has learned to walk toward things that need to end, with the full knowledge of what ending them costs, and the full acceptance of that cost, because some things need to end and the cost of not ending them is always higher. Sidious uses the Force lightning one final time. A single bolt. Everything remaining. Directed at Anakin, because Anakin is the one holding the debris field, and if the debris field collapses, Mace takes it in his blade. The Vapod loop closes around it, the energy feeds back. Sidious staggers. Ahsoka is in front of him. She looks at him. Not with triumph, not with hatred. She has not hated him for a long time, because hatred requires believing the person deserving of it has something to lose. And what she understands now is that he lost everything that mattered before she was born. She looks at him the way she has learned to look at the darkest things, with full knowledge of what they are and full acceptance of what must be done. She does not make it dramatic. One strike, precise. The culmination of 60 years of learning distilled into a single motion that does her former master's former master, the dignity of ending it cleanly without cruelty, because cruelty was always his domain and she has never wanted anything that was his. The red eyes go dark, the body falls. Silence. The Coruscant night comes through the destroyed window, distant, constant, the mechanical breathing of a city that does not know, the sound of 5 people in a room that has been through something enormous, each of them processing the specific texture of what enormous feels like from the inside. Anakin is looking at what is on the floor. He has lowered the debris field. The furniture has settled where it fell, the fragments of the window frame scattered across the office floor. He is breathing hard. He is standing. He looks at Ahsoka. "Is it done?" he says, and his voice is quiet and entirely without the machinery of managed emotion, the voice of someone whose managed emotion has finally been relieved of its purpose. "It's done," she says. "The Republic," he starts, "will be a mess for years," she says. "The institutions he built don't dismantle because he's gone. There will be work. Long, difficult, unglamorous work." She looks at him steadily, but the irreversible part, the part that could not be undone, that is over. A very long silence. "He used me my entire life," he says. "He was going to use me to kill children," he says. "Yes," she says. "But I didn't," he says. She looks at him across the dark office, at the 20-year-old face that is, for the first time in the weeks she has known him in this life, entirely unguarded, no performance, no management, no pressure held behind a wall that was never sufficient for what it was asked to contain, just him. "But you didn't," she says. The city breathes outside the broken window. The 3 blades go dark, one by one, as their bearers release them. Bail Organa answers his comm at 3 a.m. He does not sound like a man woken from sleep. He sounds like a man who has been waiting for a specific call and has not been sleeping because of it. Alert, precise, the voice of someone who has spent years in the Senate, learning to move quickly when movement is required, and to be ready when the moment for movement arrives. Without announcement, Ahsoka speaks for 4 minutes. She gives him the evidence package, the financial records, the communication intercepts, the documentation of 50 years of deliberate manipulation that she has been assembling from memory across the past weeks. She tells him where each piece can be independently verified. She tells him what needs to be broadcast and in what order and to which outlets. And she tells him that the window for doing it is closing, because the Senate's overnight security rotation will reach the Chancellor's floor in 40 minutes, and what they find there will become a narrative the moment it is found. And the narrative must already be established before they find it. "I'll need an hour," Bail says. "You have 40 minutes, she says. He takes 35. The HoloNet erupts at 4:17 in the morning, not everywhere simultaneously. The broadcast begins on the independent channels, the ones that do not run their content through Republic Communications Authority review before transmission. Bail has spent years cultivating relationships with the editors of 3 of them specifically, because he has always understood at the level of bone-deep political instinct that the day would come when official channels would be the last place truth could travel. The day has come. The evidence moves through the independent channels first, then jumps to the mid-tier outlets as they pick up the story, then reaches the major Republic feeds within 90 minutes as the volume of the corroborating documentation makes the story impossible to suppress or dismiss. Financial records, communication logs, the technical specifications of the inhibitor chips from Nalisay's confirmed testimony, the chain of shell corporations that funded both the separatist movement and the Republic's military buildup simultaneously, traced back through 7 layers of corporate obfuscation to accounts controlled by offices within the Chancellor's own administrative structure. The Senate convenes an emergency session at 7 a.m. Ahsoka watches none of it. She has done what she can do from this position. The rest belongs to people who are better at this than she is, which is how it should be. She is not a politician, has never wanted to be one, and the work of rebuilding institutions is the work of people who believe in institutions. She believes in people. The institutions are their problem. Obi-Wan finds her in the corridor outside the office an hour after the broadcast begins. He has been managing the immediate situation, the Senate guards who arrive to find a destroyed office, and a body and 5 Jedi who declined to explain themselves until the HoloNet gave them a framework to be explained within. He has been, in the way that Obi-Wan Kenobi is always these things in a crisis, precise and composed and quietly furious in a register that only people who know him well can detect. He stops beside her. He does not look at her. He looks at the corridor wall. "You knew about Padme," he says. "Yes," she says. "For how long?" he asks. "Since before I came back," she says. "And you didn't think that was information the Council?" The Council's attachment doctrine was one of the primary mechanisms Palpatine used to isolate Anakin. She says, he could not have built the specific loneliness he needed in someone who was allowed to love openly. Bringing it to the Council would have triggered a process that would have created exactly the isolation we were trying to prevent. She looks at him. "I know that is not the answer you wanted." He is quiet for a long moment. "No," he says, "but it is the honest one." A pause. "He told me himself. This morning he came to my quarters before the Senate session and he told me everything. The marriage, the pregnancy, what you told him in Naboo." Another pause, longer. He seemed lighter, in a way I have not seen him since he was a boy. Ahsoka says nothing. She does not need to. "What happens to you now?" Obi-Wan asks. "I don't know exactly," she says. "The same thing that was always going to happen, I think. Something that doesn't have a title or a rank or an institutional framework. Something that moves where it's needed." "Fulcrum," he says. She looks at him. "You said that was the name you gave yourself," he says, "in the version of events that happened." "Yes," she says. "A fixed point, a reference coordinate," he says. "Something like that," she says. He turns to look at her. In the corridor light, with the sounds of the Senate building processing what has happened filtering in from every direction, he looks at her the way he looked at her on the transit platform, trying to reconcile the face with the presence, the 16 years with the 60. "I'm glad you turned around," he says. "On the steps." "So am I," she says. He nods once. He walks back toward the office, back toward the work that needs doing, back toward the long and unglamorous process of a man who believes in institutions helping those institutions survive a catastrophe they nearly did not survive. The council session happens at midday. All 12 members. The round chamber at the temple's peak, the sunlight through the windows, the seats that have held the Order's governance for 10,000 years. Ahsoka stands in the center of it, not as a supplicant, not as a defendant, as herself. Mace Windu speaks first, because Mace Windu always speaks first when there is something difficult to be said, and he has decided to be the one to say it. "What you did, what all of you did, saved this order," he says. "Saved the Republic, exposed the Sith conspiracy, and helped us end it. The Council owes you a debt it cannot fully repay." "I'm not here to collect a debt," she says. "Then why are you here?" he asks. "To finish something I started on the steps 3 weeks ago," she says. She looks at each of them, 12 faces. Some of them she knows from years of a life that no longer exists. Plo Koon, who arrested her, who extended his hand when she was exonerated, who she has never stopped being grateful to even in the darkest versions of what came after. Kit Fisto, who fought beside her last night without hesitation. Yoda, who trusted her on a transit platform on the word of a force presence he could not explain. The Jedi Order nearly died because it made itself indispensable to a government, and in doing so handed that government the mechanism of its own destruction, she says. The clone army, the Republic's military apparatus, the seats on the High Council reserved for political relationships rather than force wisdom. These are not individual failures. They are systemic ones, and they will repeat if the system does not change. You are asking us to reform the order based on the testimony of Ki-Adi-Mundi starts. I'm not asking you to do anything, she says. I'm telling you what I saw happen when the reforms didn't come. What you do with that is your work, not mine. Silence. Right, you are, Yoda says. 3 words, the chamber holds them. Failed, we have, he continues. Not in this moment. In the years of moments that preceded it. Blind we became to what grew beneath our own temple. Arrogant we became in our certainty. Change we must. The Gimmer stick taps once. Begin today, that change will. Mace Windu does not agree immediately. He will not agree immediately. She has never expected him to. But she watches his face and sees the thing she was hoping to see. Not agreement, but the absence of refusal. The specific expression of a man whose integrity is sufficient to override his institutional loyalty when the evidence demands it. It is enough. She does not wait for the session to formally close. She bows, Not the deep bow of a Padawan to the Council, the equal bow of one person acknowledging another, and she walks out. Anakin is waiting outside the temple. Not on the steps, at the base of them on the plaza, standing in the afternoon light with his hands in his pockets in the specific posture of someone who has been standing somewhere for a while and has made peace with the waiting. He looks up when she comes down the steps. He looks different. She has been tracking the change across 3 weeks, and it has been gradual enough that she only notices it fully now. The comparison between the man in front of her and the man on the elevator platform in her memory, the one she had watched for years in recordings, the one she knew from the life she carries, the face is the same, the presence behind it is not. The pressure is gone, not resolved. She does not believe pressure like that fully resolves, not in 3 weeks, not in 3 years, but it is no longer the defining structural element of him. It is one thing among many rather than the load-bearing wall. How did it go? He asks. As expected, she says. They'll reform, slowly, painfully, with significant resistance from the members who confuse the Order's current shape with its essential nature. But they'll reform. You sound certain, he says. Yoda is certain. That's enough, she says. He nods. He looks out at the plaza, the civilians moving through it, the speeders overhead, the ordinary mid-afternoon activity of a city that is beginning to understand that something has changed without yet knowing the full shape of the change. I resigned my commission this morning, he says. She looks at him, submitted it formally to the council before the session. Effective immediately, he says. I'm not a Jedi. I don't think I ever was exactly. And the Order needs people who are, right now, more than it needs whatever I am. A pause. Padme is going to need help navigating the Senate through what comes next. And in 4 months there are going to be 2 people who need a father who is actually present. 2, she says. Twins, he says. And the smile is unguarded in a way that she has not seen on his face before, the smile of someone who has set down something very heavy and is still slightly surprised by the absence of the weight. We found out this morning. She looks at him for a long moment. The afternoon light on the temple plaza, the city around them, this man who is 20 years old and whole and standing in his own life without the machinery of suppression running underneath everything he does. Good, she says. That's all you have to say, he says. What else do you want me to say, she asks. I don't know. Something more than good covers it, she says. He laughs. An actual laugh, unperformed, the laugh of someone who has not laughed like that in long enough that it surprises him when it arrives. She lets it settle. She lets the afternoon be what it is. What do you do now, he asks, quieter when the laugh has run its course. She looks out at the city, at the traffic streams and the building tops and the sky above Coruscant that is brown-orange and lit from beneath and has never shown anyone a star, but is still, in its way, a sky. The same thing I was always going to do, she says. Move where I'm needed, work in the spaces between the official channels. There are people in this galaxy who have no one, who fall through every institutional gap, who the Jedi cannot reach and the Senate will not protect. Someone needs to be reachable by them. Fulcrum, he says. He nods. He understands it in the way that soldiers understand certain things. The necessity of the work that happens in the shadows of the official work, the reality that the galaxy is too large and too complicated for any single institution to cover. I'll know how to find you, he says. Yes, she says. Through the Force, he says. He holds out his hand, not a Jedi farewell, not a military salute, a person extending their hand to another person. She takes it. She goes alone to the observation platform at dusk. Upper level, public, open to the sky, or what passes for sky here, the orange-brown haze that sits above Coruscant like a permanent weather system, lit from below by the city that never turns off. She has been here before in the life she carries. She has stood on platforms like this in a dozen cities on a dozen worlds, always alone, always at the edge of something that was about to begin or had just ended. She holds the 2 white sabers in her hands. She does not ignite them, she turns them over in her palms, feeling the weight of the crystals inside. Not the weight of the purification, not the residue of what they carried before. Just the weight of themselves, clean, particular, entirely present. The city hums beneath her, the traffic streams in their lanes. Somewhere in the Senate district, Bail Organa is in his 18th consecutive hour of political work that will continue for months. In the temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi is having a long and difficult conversation with the Council about everything that needs to change, and he is not doing it alone. On Naboo, Padme Amidala is putting down a Senate briefing she has been reading and walking to the window and looking at the lake in the long evening light. And in a Coruscant apartment, Anakin Skywalker is sitting down at a table for the first time in his adult life without anything to manage. I carried the memory of a galaxy on fire for a very long time. I told myself it was purpose, that the wait was the point, that suffering it was the work. I understand now that I was wrong about that too. The point was never the carrying. The point was knowing when to set it down. I do not know what comes next. I have changed the course of the river, but I cannot see around every bend from here. There will be things I did not prevent. There will be failures that are mine. There will be people who need what I can provide, and I will not always be there in time. But Anakin is whole. Padme is alive. The Order will reform, slowly, painfully, with the specific stubbornness of an institution that does not want to examine itself. But it will. Yoda will make sure of it, and Obi-Wan will make sure of it, and the two of them together are more than sufficient for that particular work. And I am standing here in the air, above a city that does not yet know how close it came to becoming something unrecognizable to itself. This is enough. For today, this is enough. She clips both sabers to her belt. She turns. She looks at the city one more time, at the lights and the traffic and the haze and the ordinary, enormous, unaware life of a civilization that will wake tomorrow in a changed world and not yet know the full shape of the change. They will know pieces of it. The HoloNet will give them pieces for months. Eventually, they will know most of it. They will never know all of it. She is at peace with that. My name is Ahsoka Tano. I am a fulcrum, a fixed point, a reference coordinate, a place where the lost can find their bearing. I belong to no order. I serve no government. I answer to the Force and to the people who need what only I can give. I walked away from him once, and it cost the galaxy everything. I will not walk away again. This is the beginning. She walks. She does not look back. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.